All right, Patrick, thank you for joining me today. It is January 23rd, 2022. The market has been dumping. Excited to get your take on the market, the action that we've seen over the past week. We got some Reaper news that we need to talk about. You guys reached out to a new all-time high since we last spoke. That's exciting, and I know you guys got some listings on exchanges coming up, other things that we'll be talking about in regards to Reaper. Going to get your thoughts on the rest of the cryptocurrency space, government regulations potentially around the corner. We're seeing them debate now in Congress. So we're very excited to have you back on tonight, Patrick. Thank you. And thank you for joining us. How are you doing, Patrick?
Hey, Zach. Doing great. I'm just going to preface this by saying that anything I say on here is my own personal opinion and the opinion of Reaper Financial and not a representation of the United States government or United States Army. Since I'm in uniform, I do apologize for that. So thank you, Zach, for having me. And I'm going to share what I can.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for your service, man. I didn't realize that you were active duty when we first spoke, but definitely appreciate you for your service. And yeah, and as always, guys, this is not financial advice. There is no sort of promotion deal going on here. We're just trying to have a conversation. And I've been fascinated about Reaper as soon as I learned about it, had the first initial conversation with you, Patrick. And I'm very excited to see not only your project, but the continued development in the XRP ecosystem. So let's get started, Patrick. What's your current take on this market dump? Everyone's getting wrecked. A lot of people starting to panic. I've been trying to let people know that this is nothing to panic over, but what are your thoughts on the current market?
Well, the market at large, including the stock market and global markets, we were already so far overpriced and over the fiscal cliff that all we had to do was look down and it was going to fall. So it was never going to take much of a push for us to start a decline. And I think everyone saw a little bit of decline, and that really started the panic setting in. And we saw that in the crypto market as well. We see it translating. However, I wouldn't say that the current decline is anything out of the normal for that 60% decline in the Bitcoin market cap that we've seen in previous cycles. So from my perspective, this is par for the course, and nothing has changed.
So people got excited when we had that first conversation and you called for Bitcoin going to 200K. Are we still kind of in that path? What do you think about that?
I think we definitely are. Yes.
Wow.
So for going from 1,000 up to 20,000 from the 2013 to 2017 cycle, when Bitcoin declined from its all-time high, it only went down at its lowest to 300% of the previous cycle. Right now, we're at just 35,000 when our previous all-time high was 20. I don't see the correlation that we are staying this low. I don't think this bull cycle is over. 35,000 should be below the bottom of the next bear cycle.
Okay. So originally you were saying that we were heading there by around April or so. I don't want to hold you to any date, but you're still kind of within that time frame. We're going to be moving back up here and finishing off this bull run in the spring.
I think that's still very realistic, very possible. I will say that every time the SEC and Ripple agree to extend the case, I wonder if they know something I don't about the course of the market. But it's still very likely, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And okay. So what happened here with Reaper? We saw Reaper just went on a tear up over 30 cents. I don't know what it actually ended up hitting, but what do you think drove that?
Yeah, we hit 0.39. We were able to do 3 consecutive bull flags, and it did come back down to about 50% retrace, and now it's bounced off of that and is climbing again. Part of that has to do with buy the news or buy the rumor, sell the news. So we had our BitTrue listing and vote, which went through on the 19th were these. After that, we saw a sell-off, and now that we had that retrace, we start trading on BitTrue tomorrow. So I feel like that was probably a large contributing factor.
Yeah, so the BitTrue listing's coming tomorrow. Can you speak on any others that may be in the pipeline?
Yep. We're applying to another 10 exchanges, but I don't want to list them off just because I know it's more than likely only 3, maybe 4 of those will actually approve us. So we will release those publicly as they get approved.
Okay, fantastic. And then what's the current status of the Reaper vote?
So the final 5 qualifiers for the second reaping have been finalized. So we have XR Doge, Treasury, XAVE, Xquake is on there again, and there's one more I'm kicking myself for not knowing it off the top of my head. XRP coins. So all 5 of those will go to the final voting, which starts tomorrow, and it will be open until the 31st of January at noon Eastern Standard Time. Once we conclude that voting, there'll be a 12-hour time block from the end of voting until the actual reaping, which will be midnight Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be printing 1%, selling that into our buy orders, and then using 97% of those proceeds to buy and burn, reap, destroy the winner of that vote.
Okay. So you might do Xquake again. That was the first one, right?
Yeah, it was the first one, and I know a lot of people are a little bit against doing the same token again. What I say to that is that the best way to avoid that is to buy Reaper tokens and vote for a different target. If the same target ends up being reaped over and over, sooner or later their value will balance out, and it won't be profitable to target them again. So eventually it will move on one way or the other, but it's up to the holders. It's not up to us. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. Now your couple other guys on your team they're talking with the people at XAVE, right? Is that what you said today?
They're doing a AMA with XAVE, X Avengers right now, and just kind of talking over what XAVE brings to the market and why they think they should be the winners of the reaping. We made the same offer to all of the other tokens, but not all were as eager to get onto a live chat and talk about themselves. So that's fine. That's up to them.
Right. Okay, cool. What's the potential of you guys burning NFTs?
So we're willing to burn the tokens associated with NFT projects, but we don't want to burn NFTs themselves because it doesn't benefit very many holders, and it's also destroying art, and that's just something we don't see a value proposition in doing.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, I wanted to give you a chance to clarify your thoughts on Flare. I know people saw you guys make an exchange, you and Hugo, and huge shout out to Hugo for what they're working on over there at Flare. I'm super excited for that development in the ecosystem as well. What are your thoughts on Flare, and what do you think the future has in store for Flare?
So I don't want anyone to get me wrong. I like Flare. And I totally respect what Hugo's doing and that team. Now I'd actually communicated with that team within about a week of launch, and we did a Zoom meeting with that whole team on how we could implement Flare and possibly migrate into F assets and voting, and that's all still on the table as a potential future application for Reaper. So I like that team and I like what they're doing. I do think that they're building a space shuttle to drive across a parking lot. It's very complicated and it's very drawn out, and it's a very intensive process. Whereas me being military and my background, I like to do what I can with what I have.
Right.
So just very different philosophies, but still a great project.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to see what they come up with. Now, I asked you this last time. What do you think? Are they're trying to get a lot done? Do you think that the lawsuits stalling them are part of the reason why they're kind of holding back?
I do think so. I think that was why we saw the Songbird release. I think that they're probably stalling for the lawsuit to end so that they can have a more free market as they enter. I think they're a little bit shy about what the SEC outcome might be.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so what's your thoughts on the government regulations? You know, we saw the Congress talk about Bitcoin mining energy consumption this week, and we got to hear their thoughts. My take is that it's more likely that states are going to be able to take action if they want to tax or try to ban Bitcoin mining, proof of work. But on a national level, I just feel like listening to that, for one, it takes them so long to get anything done. So we may still be waiting another year or two for them to even get regulation or some sort of crypto law. But I know you wanted to speak on that. So what do you have to say?
Yeah, for sure. So, as a government employee, everything the government does is going to be slow. But I do have a solid inside source that within the next couple of weeks there'll be some very positive information coming out for the XRP ledger and for cryptocurrency in general. And I think everybody will be pleased to see the government moving in the right direction for once.
So I know you can't speak on this too much, but you said a good development for the XRP ledger. Did I hear you correctly?
You heard me correctly.
Okay. Let's not get too excited yet, folks. What are your thoughts on this? You know, Friday, we saw that the SEC wants to appeal having to give over these documents that the judge just ordered. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, most of the court case is a circus, and I think that there's a little bit of naivete in, you know, not just America, but people in general don't always understand that lawsuits are not about justice. They're about procedure, and they're about, for business, they're just a business tool. And that's what this is. This is a application of a tool to get to a certain end state. So when we see these different things going on in the SEC lawsuit, it's not that one side is right or the other side is wrong. It's a negotiation in progress.
Right. Yeah, for me, this thing has to be settled up, or else the SEC gets completely exposed. What are your thoughts?
I think the SEC definitely is on the defensive and wants to save face at this point. I don't think they're going to take any end state that would be discrediting to them in the future, and they want to leave an open door for them to go after certain cryptocurrency projects in the future. That said, the Trade Commission is probably the more correct place to regulate and govern over cryptocurrency, and I think the SEC is aware of that fact.
Yeah. So you said that we got some good news coming potentially for the crypto space and for the XRP ledger. So do you think that they want to establish kind of like a new Howey test by using Ripple as an example?
I think that's inevitable either way. The outcome of the case and the legislation that will take place within the next 2 years is going to set a new standard. And let's not fool ourselves to say that the Howey test is a perfect application to our current situation, because it's not. So we have to be realistic that we're in uncharted territory, and we have to find a reasonable way forward.
Yeah. Okay, so I was mentioning to you how I just dropped a video comparing the ICOs of Algorand and Ethereum and the way they were done. And with Algorand, they did it in a way that I think is actually going to pass through regulations or whatever laws they end up passing. But it's one of few ICOs that I think will. And the way that they did it is they used a Dutch auction, is what it's called. And it's a mechanism for making sure that the market sets the price and that everyone's paying the same price. So it's not Algorand setting the price, It's the free market, the people that want to contribute to the ICO and participate, and everyone has to pay the same price. And then I compared it, I ran it through a whole criteria, kind of comparing the two. And we've got your thoughts on the ICOs last time we spoke. And you said that a lot of these you believe that the SEC should go after because what they're doing was wrong. And so I don't want to put words in your mouth. Let's get your take on that. Can you clarify your position in regards to that? And then maybe your thoughts on the criteria that I mentioned before we hopped on here. What are your thoughts on that?
So as far as Algorand's ICO versus Ethereum, I do think it's a superior model. I still think it's the wrong model. The reason being, what they're doing is they're selling tokens and they're taking money from the community for those tokens. In that regard, it's still like an initial public offering. It's still an initial coin offering. What we did with Reaper Financial was we did a completely free airdrop and we did no pre-sales. We took no money from our community, no price setting of any kind. And it's worth to the community what they're willing to pay for it from other people. So by virtue of the fact that Algo took money to sell their tokens, I take that as a lack of confidence in the value of their token. And I take that for all ICOs or pre-sales, that is a company that doesn't actually see their token as producing its own value. And I personally would never invest in anything that did an ICO or a pre-sale because I think it's a bad recipe.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've kind of stayed away from that too. I think I was holding XDC, but yeah, no, that's kind of what I've been telling people too, is that we have to take the words of Gary. He says that every ICO was a securities offering. And he said that multiple times. And he said he agrees with his predecessor, Jay Clayton, who also said that. And so if we take them at their word, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of Gary or Clayton at all.
Right.
But I do agree on that sense that an ICO is a security.
Right. Right. Yeah, I agree. And I'm not a fan of them either. But yeah, we have to, they're the ones who are in charge right now. And yeah, so I'm excited though. I think the fact that you're saying that we have some potential government regulation, something in the pipeline here, that's good because that's what we're waiting on. Because other than that, bringing it back to the market, I just don't see any catalyst to drive this market back up unless we had the Fed reverse course on what they're telling us they're going to do, or if we did get some sort of stimulus bill packaged and everyone got free money again. But the only other
even worse.
yeah, right. But the one catalyst, the wild card, the joker is the Ripple versus SEC case, and if that gets settled, then that would spur on a continued run up, I do believe. So yeah, I really am hopeful of that, or some sort of regulations passed at the congressional level, because other than that, I'm not seeing many catalysts that'll continue to push this market up. But is that kind of what has you feeling bullish still?
Well, I'm bullish for a lot of reasons, but I do think that hyper cryptoization is coming. I don't think it will be hyper Bitcoinization, and I don't say that as a jab at Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to do just fine. But blockchain in general is definitely going to pick up pace in the near future.
Right, right. What were your thoughts when I said that the states would be more likely to try to ban Bitcoin or mining proof of work versus having a nationwide ban here, specifically in America?
Well, I think that before we see states banning Bitcoin, what we'll see is states passing laws to accommodate. And we've always seen that on a micro scale of certain cities. There are cities even paying residents to move there in Bitcoin to relocate to help and make a crypto-friendly economy in that area. I have a strong suspicion we'll see specific states such as Texas, North Dakota, South Dakota moving in that same direction. Probably, if I had to guess, the bread belt will move in that direction to accommodate cryptocurrency in a very strong way.
Okay. Yeah, for everyone who's tuning in, by the way, start to drop your questions down below, and we will ask Patrick some questions here from the audience. So if you guys want to drop that, we are live on TikTok and YouTube. So drop your comments below, and we'll run through them for you guys. Now, well, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about with you, Patrick. We already talked about the listings. Oh, you did tell us that there was a development as far as Reaper and one of your board members. Can you speak on that?
Yep, so we will be doxing one additional board member tonight. I'm just working on his bio a little bit once I get out of where I'm at. And then we'll be releasing that tonight. I'm very excited. He's an absolutely amazing person. I don't say that to overstate it. He's a very impressive individual, and somebody who has literally been willing to die for his integrity. So um, I don't want to spoil it, but I'm very happy he's on board, and I think all our investors will be very happy he's on board.
You said you're doxing him. What do you mean? You're bringing him on, or are you kicking him off?
Yeah, no, he's already been on our board, but we're releasing his information publicly, so he
Oh,
will be
I see. I
publicly
see.
associated with us.
You're exposing the grand reveal. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. So that's one of your board members.
Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. Any other developments for Reaper that you want to speak on?
Yeah, so there will be some changes. So previously what we did was Twitter votes for the first reaping, and then for the second one we did Twitter votes as qualifiers, and the last reaping is only Reaper holders are going to be able to vote. Moving forward, next month in February, we're going to be doing a reaping every single Saturday, and it's going to be Reaper holders only, no more Twitter polls, and all of the 20 projects that are eligible will be eligible to vote on. So it's going to be much more dynamic. You might be able to get your token to win with only 5 to 10 million votes if it's spread out enough between the other tokens.
So we're gonna have basically four. We're gonna have one every weekend, reaping.
Yep.
Wow.
Every weekend, the way it'll be calculated is we take 1% of the previous month's total supply, and we are going to divide that by the number of Saturdays. So it'll be 4 Saturdays in February and March, and I think 5 in April. So it'll be 0.2 percent for each of those Saturdays. But I think our price by then will support it just fine.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. And then any new developments for the NFTs?
So we do have our first NFT ready to go, and our chief of creative design, Stefan, and I'm again not going to try to butcher his last name. He's our artist, and he has been accepted into Sologenic for the first NFT release. So we're going to have our NFT of Quake being reaped for the very first one, and that will be one of the very first ones auctioned on Sologenic Marketplace.
Wow. Okay, that's exciting. So that's coming like next month, you said?
So if I'm correct, Sologenic announced that they would be releasing their marketplace on the 28th of January.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm super excited about that. Oh yeah, since you mentioned that, what's your take on this solo airdrop? I haven't checked. I didn't check yesterday, and I need to check today. But they said it was going to take a few days for the airdrop to go through. What I've been seeing is that people who held Sologenic for the snapshot have received their solo, but people that just held XRP, like myself, have not received any solo yet. Maybe I have. Well, I haven't checked the last 24 hours. But what was your take on that airdrop and how they've done that?
So I mean, it definitely drove up price. I think that their their press release of how they were doing that airdrop may have been a little bit misleading or confusing for a lot of people as far as the ratio or the amount that they would receive for the airdrop. And naturally, the airdrop causes the price to crash right after, and then they have the Corium airdrop that followed right on. So On one hand, I support airdrops, and I think that Sologenic does a great job as a DEX. On the other hand, I think that airdrops are a way of stringing people along and holding your token, and generally the price collapses after, which is why we only did our one airdrop, and that's it. There's no more airdrops coming, with the exception of DeFi payouts in the future.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah. Did you participate in the airdrop?
I did not.
No.
I sold my solo just before the snapshot, and I bought more Reaper token with it, and I don't regret that decision.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Hey, one take that I had from the airdrop, I want to get your thoughts on this. There was 22 billion XRP that participated in the airdrop. And my takeaway from that was that there's about half the supply of XRP, and even more than that, because we know a lot of people like yourself that have XRP and other people too didn't participate in the airdrop. So there's even more XRP in the hands of what I would consider just regular people who are holding their bags of XRP. And my point in bringing this up and the takeaway that I got is that a network like Swift, any banks or financial institutions that want to eventually adopt XRP, I came up with this ultimate XRP equation where I was talking about, Swift daily volume, what price would XRP need to be at, and how much XRP would they have. Now, specifically, I want to talk about how much XRP would they have available. I was running numbers at like 5 billion XRP or 10 billion XRP because of this exact point that I'm making, where XRP's in the hands of regular people like myself who are planning on holding it until much, much higher prices. So they're not going to be able to get even half the supply, half the circulating supply of XRP to run these networks. What are your thoughts on that takeaway that I just mentioned?
Well, first I would say that although most people say they're going to hold till a higher price, most people are going to sell out and have paper hands at $100 in XRP or 500, 589, right? I think there'll be plenty of sale on the market for them to absorb that, uh, down in the lower hundreds and at 1,000 or 2,000. Um, I don't think that many people are actually that diamond handed that they'll hold for a 30,000 XRP.
Yeah, and that was I was saying too, is that I know that when XRP goes to $10, a lot of people are going to sell off. I mean, even when we just go to a new all-time high at $5, people are going to be dumping their
Yeah.
bags that have held forever, right? But my point being is that there's not 30 billion XRP for the banks and financial institutions to run payment networks, settlement layer now. And there's not going to be until people offload their XRP and then they're able to accumulate it and start using it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I mean that is where the buyback theory comes in. Is it does have merit and it has constitutional precedence. It has legal precedence with the previous executive orders. So I think that it's a totally possible potential scenario that there would be a buyback. But like I said, I think that the government being the government, they're going to be stingy and they're going to try to get it at a lower price. So naturally, if they bought up through $100, through a few $100, they're going to be able to absorb the large majority of that at a much lower price.
Hmm. Do you think that they're going to try to force us into that buyback, or are they going to just try to make the deal good enough?
Well, if we're looking at the previous executive order for gold, there was criminal penalties and financial penalties to hold and or trade gold. Given that XRP is a open blockchain ledger, it would be relatively easy for the government to trace and find out if somebody had previously done that. So if they did pass a law against it, it's not unreasonable to say that it could be by force. Eh, if you've been watching the world for the last 2 years, you know that they can get pretty pushy when it comes to it.
So do you think that there's a potential where they could force a buyback and that price could be pretty low?
I think they could force a buyback. As far as the price being low, that's really up to the XRP holders' will, and that's why I published our official position on the SEC versus Ripple Labs case, is because people need to know what their actual rights are in accordance with the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and Fifth Amendment. I mean, and if they know that they are mandated by the Constitution to receive fair compensation, then it's up to them to decide what that fair compensation is. And they need to know how to calculate that. They need to have a realistic idea. And I'll be honest, it's not in the hundreds of dollars. It's much higher.
Right. Yeah. And we had that discussion last time and how you've come up with everything. And I thought that you're spot on. Now, would they try to screw us over? I do think that is
Sure.
how they operate, right? But I think you make a good point there. Now, if they tried to cut us short, I always say that there's going to be another class action lawsuit. There's going to be, I mean, that's going to be going to court as well. What do you think about that?
Definitely. I would guarantee it that there would be additional follow-on lawsuits of XRP holders who are saying that they did not get a fair, just compensation for their XRP. I would say that would happen regardless of whether it was 1,000 or 100,000. We'll see that lawsuit follow on.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any insights or like, the Fed has been given this proposal. Do you think that they're taking it serious or did they disregard it? Did they not even look at it?
As far as the proposal by Valale, or however you say that, Valley Capital, I doubt that that's the serious proposal because it wasn't a requested proposal. It wasn't something that was contracted by the government to be given to them. It was just sent to them. So it's a little bit of hopium wishful thinking that those guys would like the Fed to consider. At the same time, I would be willing to bet that the Fed has already been considering it, already had their own teams going and conducting research and finding out what a realistic price would be that's most beneficial to them.
Yeah, and this wouldn't affect people outside of the US, would it?
It would. So, because the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1946, the US dollar is the global reserve currency, right? So, the way that other banks, treasuries, and other central banks generate money is they back it with US Treasury bonds and T bills, right? So, if the US decides to go and confiscate all the XRP in the United States, that means every central bank around the world that is, holding a US Treasury bill is basically going to be arm twisted into doing something similar and compensating for that XRP in the local currency.
Well, and we know that if you go against the wishes and you turn away from the almighty dollar, what we like to do here, at least over the past couple decades. So that's they definitely can strong arm countries into doing that. So that's an interesting take. That Bretton Woods agreement would bring in XRP holders from across the world. I never thought of that way.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, let's take some audience questions. Let's see what we got here. Okay, what were your thoughts on the Federal Reserve report that they just dropped?
Which one?
On the central bank digital currency.
So I only read some highlights from it. I think that central bank digital currency, it's inevitable one way or the other. Even if XRP ran, free range and Bitcoin's free range and everything's just running wild, there's still got to be a medium of exchange that is backed by the government that is some form of fiat, and that's going to end up being digital because that's the natural evolution of our economy right now is that it's moving to digital. So we will have a CBDC regardless of anything it's coming. As far as what our actual threats are there, we need to make sure that we pass legislation protecting Americans from CBDCs that would mirror China's outline. So what China did is they issued out currency and they gave a hardline date that it had to be spent by or it expires. And essentially that's like giving you you know you back to Klaus Schmidt or Klaus
Klaus
Schwab
Schwab.
or yeah, you'll own nothing and be happy. Well, that's not acceptable. I'm not happy with that answer. And I know the large majority of free humans are not happy with that answer. So we have to ensure that the governments, as they produce CBDCs, are not putting chains around our necks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've been making videos of explaining to people because they seem to be confused that the central bank digital currencies and like the Chinese yuan are going to take away from the utility or use case of XRP. And I'm trying to explain to them that it's only going to increase the need, utility, and use case for XRP as a neutral bridge currency. Are you along the same line of thought?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the other thing that we have to consider is once you start having CBDCs and those are controlling what people are able to spend their money on, then that's a whole nother form of censorship, which is taking place in China, is with their social credit system, they're able to essentially control who is able to spend money and when. So we have to take steps to ensure that as we go into a CBDC, because it's guaranteed that we will, that the American people and people around the world and in their own countries have protections from the government.
So someone's asking here, guys, I'm taking your questions right now, so drop them down below. What would be a good buyback number?
I mean, that's going to depend on the individual and how much they're holding and what they'd be happy with, and the the price that's going to come out is going to be somewhere in the middle or lower. It's going to be average or lower, because that's just the way that a merger and acquisition like this would go. So I don't want to throw out a number because it's a little bit meaningless to do so.
It's like people ask me all the time, is 2,000 XRP enough? Is 10,000 XRP enough? I'm like, well, same deal, right?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, let's talk about that though, just because you did say that the value of the US dollar is in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. And that's how we come to a price that could potentially be in the 5 digits, like 10,000 plus.
Yes.
Right, right, right. And one of my big takeaways from that is you were talking about all of, like, people get it twisted thinking that the Federal Reserve is the only institution that prints dollars, but you were saying that there's quite a bit of money, especially with like our CIA and other agencies that kind of are printing money and black holing it. Can you speak on that again?
So not black holing it, but black budget. So black budget is essentially money that is printed that is completely off the books, and spent on things that are not reported. So there's massive amounts of black budget funds out there. You know, things that go back to, for example, the Manhattan Project. Right, you had 130,000 people working on the Manhattan Project, and at that time, it was the most expensive thing the United States government had ever done. If we hadn't dropped 2 A bombs on Japan, would people have ever known that we spent that money, that we had done that we had that capability? No, right? If it wasn't publicly evidenced, people would still be clueless. And if you said right now that there's bombs that can blow up a whole city block, a whole city, the entire state of New York, whatever, no one would believe you. You'd be a crazy conspiracy theorist. So there are definitely things that we are spending money on, and it is a massive amount of money, and that needs to be calculated into the price that would arise if there was a buyback.
What if you were a betting man? What is your like percentage chance that you think a buyback actually happens?
55.
Okay, just slightly better than 50-50. I like that. I like that. Well, I like to say that it solves a debt crisis and a liquidity crisis for our country and our Federal Reserve. What do you think about that?
Um, I think it definitely solves a lot of problems that the government is trying to avoid. And everyone knows that when you have this type of economic strife throughout the world, the go to easy button generally is to start a world war or start a war where it spurs the economy. I don't necessarily think that that will work this time, given that it's the dollar that's really in trouble, and the dollar is the global reserve currency. So it doesn't really matter what you do, the problem is still global as far as going to war. So I do think that's largely a distraction. I think that the problem has to be a solution to the dollar.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that we're going to see XRP relisted on exchanges or taken off of these exchanges as it moves into the hands of more banks and financial institutions?
Um, that's a wonderful question. I wouldn't even venture a guess on that, because that's kind of, there's too many things that have to happen between now and then, to know a direction on that.
That's a lot of the questions when we have this buyback conversation, when we talk about XRP. I get a lot of these questions like that. And I'm like, well, there's so many variables that go into that pure speculation. And my guess is just about as good as anybody else's, pretty much, you know? Like you can run through the scenarios on how we get there, but yeah, I know. These are the types of questions that we get, and it's like it could go so many different ways. But I stand by my statement that XRP is not meant for us. It is meant for wholesale payments, a settlement token. And do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, of course, when it was originally designed, it was meant to just be another cryptocurrency. It was acquired by Ripple Labs, which built it into something else and saw a different potential of it. And I think that the way that Ripple Labs has built out their products around the use case of XRP, including things like on-demand liquidity, the future liquidity hub. I think it was built to be a large corporation and government used asset by Ripple Labs. So XRP is one thing. What Ripple Labs does is another.
Yeah. hmm What's your overall take on Ripple, on Brad Garlinghouse and the direction that they're leading the company? I feel like they are one of the most respectable, if not the most, because of how transparent they've been in a lot of ways. What do you think about Ripple?
So I think Ripple was an inevitability in that it takes what is otherwise the Wild West of cryptocurrency and it adds an air of legitimacy. And I think Ripple is really the first and maybe the only player in the game thus far to raise it to the level of big banking and big government successfully. And personally, I try to model my own company a little bit off of Ripple in the sense that I want the legitimacy aspect of being a serious business to translate as opposed to just another meme coin out there or whatever it may be.
A lot of people are trying to figure out these little XRP riddles and everything, and who David Schwartz is. Is David Schwartz Satoshi? A lot of people suggest that. I always say that I don't think that David is Satoshi, but I think that he might have a clue who it is. What do you think about David?
I definitely don't think David Schwartz is Satoshi. I think he's a talented programmer, and he was in it in the early days. But some of his own philosophies, some of the things he posts, don't really align with the philosophies of Satoshi. So I don't necessarily think that's true. I think they're two different people.
Yeah, yeah. He I don't really know much about it, but I think that he has to be probably one of the best cryptographers in the world. I mean, just going back to that patent that he did back in 1988 and then his involvement at the NSA, I just feel like he's been tapped in from the very beginning. What is your speculation on who is Satoshi?
Well, I think it's three people. It is speculation, right? But if I were to actually venture a guess, and I guess I'll say this because a million people have said it before, but I'd lean towards Elon Musk in coordination with Larry Page, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name. He passed away. Um, but I think there was coordination early on because of the timing with the 2008 market crash. The same time that Tesla and SpaceX were both ready to go under. And if you look at the contract with PayPal, Elon Musk being unable to own and operate an internet banking institution, it seems to me that a lot of the problems that Elon Musk had at that time were properly solved by Bitcoin. And it would explain a lot of how Tesla and SpaceX has managed to uh, pull out impossible wins financially at times. So I have some suspicion there.
You
I'll
think
be honest.
is that other guy John McAfee?
No, no, not McAfee. McAfee's in a whole nother deal.
Okay. Okay. So I've never heard that. Well, I mean, I guess I've heard some people suggest Elon Musk. Larry Page is the CEO of Google, right?
Formerly,
Former,
yes.
okay, right. It's Eric
So
Schmidt now. Yeah. Wow. So I've never heard Larry Page.
Elon Musk used to sleep on Larry Page's couch during those days.
Isn't it funny how these
So
guys, they are all sleeping on each other's couches out there in the tech world and these big companies?
yeah, so I think there's room for that speculation to be legitimate. I think that Elon Musk conducts himself very intelligently in a way that guides people to cryptocurrency through Doge, while in reality Tesla publicly purchased Bitcoin. And you know, Doge is the nice entry, but I think Elon Musk knows that there's a bigger game.
So Elon, Larry, and you got you're blanking on the third guy?
Yeah, Hal Finney. Hal Finney.
Okay, right, right. He was one of the early Bitcoin developers, right?
Yeah. So I mean, in Silicon Valley, where it was likely due to the timestamps that Satoshi Nakamoto was actually located at the time of releasing Bitcoin, which is, taking an average of his posts and figuring out roughly when he would have slept and when he would have been awake. It's most likely that the location was somewhere in vicinity of Silicon Valley, Fresno, California. Um, and I think that the coincidences point largely towards Elon Musk, Hal Finney, and Larry Page in coordination. Which, I mean, of course, if Larry Page was involved, there could have been a whole team at Google um, that maybe they're just all floating around and have NDAs, and maybe David Schwartz was one of them. Who knows?
Right. Okay, so Elon Musk. So do you think that Elon, he was basically getting away from you said he had a contract with PayPal, but we know about the PayPal mafia and or that's the kind of the term or the name that they've been given. So you think
Yep.
that this was a way for him to get away from his contract with PayPal to create something else?
To create what he was trying to create with PayPal, which was an internet-based payment platform. But because of his contract when PayPal basically booted him from the company, he wasn't allowed to create, or I shouldn't say create, but he wasn't allowed to own or operate a banking institution in the digital world.
I see. I see.
And technically, Satoshi does not own or operate Bitcoin.
Right. That's an interesting take there. I've never heard that one put together with Larry Page and Hal Finney. Because I know a lot of people do think that it was Hal Finney, or he had a part in it. And
I am 100% certain Hal Finney was involved, and that just goes into the first Bitcoin transfer and his interactions with Satoshi. So I have no doubt in that.
okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to dig more on that. And Larry Page with Google, they've been working with our NSA and our government for a while, haven't they?
Yeah.
So in that sense, you would have a tie back. Well, okay, but so do you think that basically they were working with the government, or do you think that this was something that they were doing outside of government?
Well, that's a complicated question because you got to understand a little bit more how government works. Government is not necessarily like separate from the corporation. There are parts of corporations that are in some ways in an authority position over the government with what they develop. Um, it, there are things like Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works, Boeing, now SpaceX. Some of the technology they develop, that's what shapes the way the government goes. It's not the other way around. The government doesn't tell tech where to go.
Right, right. So basically, they like had a finger on it, but not really. They was kind of just like eyes on.
Yeah.
Because okay, and that would make sense why basically they've had back doors to watch the network the whole time, but it was promoted as this autonomous network. But really, they've been able to watch this thing the whole time.
Of course.
So they know where all the bad actors are at, and they know where all the bodies are hidden, essentially.
Yes.
Hmm. Now, but you've said that you think that Bitcoin's here to stay.
Yeah, I do think it's here to stay. It's the first thing in the digital universe. Like you said before, it's going to be the digital gold. I don't think that's even a question at this point. Um, but as I said before, toilet paper in the actual economy is more valuable than gold because you need it and it flows more, and people panic to get it. Um, so the reality is gold's only 8 trillion out of a $500 trillion market cap for this world, give or take.
Yeah. So do you think it'll surpass the market cap of gold?
Bitcoin,
Yeah.
yes. Once it really goes into a hyper cryptoization of the economy, gold itself will be kind of relegated to a archaic way of doing jewelry and art, kind of as it's always been. But I don't think gold will hold a lot of value moving forward, especially in the space age.
What about quantum computers and the ability to attack the network? Is that a concern for Bitcoin?
No, the reason that's not a concern for Bitcoin is because if you have a quantum computer that can hack Bitcoin, you have a quantum computer that can hack every single bank and every single personal transaction and account in the world. So if they crack Bitcoin, then it doesn't really matter because they've cracked everything.
I see. I see. Do you okay. Yeah. So do you think that they're going to start running the Bitcoin network on quantum computers eventually?
Yeah, that's the natural evolution, but people don't per se understand what quantum computing is very well yet. So quantum computing, you essentially, instead of ones and zeros, you have a sphere, and that sphere can be in any of 365 degrees and any uh, orientation of that 365 degrees, and each point can be a data point. Um, with quantum computing, it ends up being 99% accurate, as they said in a recent story I was reading today. 99% accurate in computing when you're trying to send billions of gigabytes a second. How many of those can you afford to lose in 1% to be inaccurate? Um, so quantum computing is great, but it's not there yet, and I don't think that the way it functions is a threat to cryptocurrency just yet.
How far out do you think it is?
20 years.
Wow. Wow. So, but we know that they are testing and working on it. There is quantum computers today, right? But they're just in the early stages working it out.
Yeah, I mean, there are some advanced ones out there, but what they do as far as a hacking aspect to get into networks like cryptocurrency is not it's not competitive yet for that use case. It's very competitive for other use cases such as data analysis or tracking of targets, that kind of thing. But it's not going to get you in the back door of Bitcoin anytime soon.
Okay, one of the concerns that I've had with Bitcoin is when it was being mined over in China, there was four large mining pools over there that were running like 60% of the network. They've since banned it, and I thought that that was a good thing because it did help decentralize the network. But I was looking through the mining pool data earlier last week, and the top four mining pools do 57% of the network. The top six do 80%, and the top eight mining pools do 92%, give or take. But I understand that the mining pools, you have different, many miners are contributing to that pool. But do you think that is that a problem for the Bitcoin network?
It's a problem for it moving forward as a country-backed currency like El Salvador is doing, or for it couldn't be the U.S. national currency, right?
Right.
Reason being, they can't have something that's not under control. So if somebody can go and build a few computers and take over their network, that's obviously not an acceptable solution to the current problem.
Right. Is that a concern just for the overall Bitcoin network, like that four mining pools do over 51%, which is all you need to attack the network? So if you were able to, I don't know, hack those four entities or persuade those four entities, you could fork the network.
I mean, there's already been probably 100 to 1,000 forks of the Bitcoin network, and there's people that would contest right now that Bitcoin is not the true Bitcoin. Of course, we don't give them any any weight in that saying that, but um, yeah, I don't see it as an issue, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Guys, if you have any more questions down below, let's run through them. Patrick, how much more time do you got?
My battery is on 14%.
Okay. And I appreciate you coming to us live from the field. If you guys are wondering why you can't see Patrick, that's my technical issues, and he's also out in the field right now. So I appreciate your service, and thank you for giving us the time coming on here and answering questions. So if you guys have them, drop them down below. We'll do rapid fire Q&A to wrap this off. But Patrick, you've dropped some gems, and those concerns that I just outlined with the Bitcoin network have been my major concerns for Bitcoin. But I think the way that you explained that was insightful. And my speculation was that quantum computers were coming sooner and that they would be more of a threat to the Bitcoin network and other networks. But like you say, if they can crack Bitcoin, they're going to be able to crack other ones as well.
Yep.
I know David Schwartz had mentioned in a past interview that they'd already been working on making XRP quantum resistant. So do you think that is something that blockchains will have to consider over the next 10, 20 years?
I mean, you should always be adjusting your product for future development and quarters five forces and potential technological threats. So that's just a natural part of the evolution of any cryptocurrency. If they're not thinking about those potential threats, then they're not going to make it in the market.
What pairings is Reaper going to have on Bitrue tomorrow? Do you know?
So I don't actually know the answer on that one. I requested an XRP pairing and a USDC pairing, but I'm not sure if that's what I'm getting, or we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Did you see? I think after we spoke last is when the news came out that the Department of Justice is investigating the executives at Tether. Did you see that news?
I did not, but that comes as exactly no surprise.
Right. We talked about that briefly last discussion, I think, about Tether and what they've kind of been doing over there. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds.
For sure.
What what are your thoughts on precious metals, gold and silver?
So gold and silver are great as far as short-term economic strife. If you were to have something like a collapse of your government, something like that, that you needed to flee and have some wealth with you, it could be good in that situation. As far as an actual investment going into the future, you have to remember that we have a dozen different civilian space agencies right now ready to go out to Phobos 16 or 17 or whatever that meteorite is that's worth $250 in precious metal. They can go out there, they can take a single load and bring it back to Earth, and they suddenly have more precious metal than the entire government or the entire planet. So, what's precious metal worth once we start mining space and the supply becomes infinite? And the answer is very little. It will have to be pegged to a asset that is uh, hard coded, not to inflate, and that's got to be at this point XRP as the top contender.
Yeah. Yeah. What are your thoughts? A lot of people concerned about blackouts and different events like that occurring right now. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, yeah, it's FUD.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a next disaster, a next crisis, a next this, a next that, a next collapse, and people are always going to be afraid of it. I think Mark Twain said it best that he spent the majority of his life afraid of things that never happened. Uh, you know, you can be prepared for those things, but don't plan on those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that we have a pretty good what do you think, what's your takes on our space force right now?
Uh, well, being in uniform, I can't say very much about that right now.
Okay. Okay. What about SpaceX with Elon launching the satellites? For me, what I'm looking at is when are we going to ramp up this quantum financial system that everyone talks about? Is that a real thing? Is that coming soon? Is Elon even tied in with that with his satellites?
I mean, so once you have Starlink fully operational, it would be very difficult to shut down for any government, and that gives a chance to bank the unbanked through nothing more than a cell phone. And I think that really opens up all types of growth for humanity in general, especially in the economic setting of digital currency.
Yeah, and where I get excited is that proof of payment that Ripple just dropped. Did you see that?
I did not.
So proof of payment, it allows people to use the XRP ledger without um, what is it? Without
Without online connection.
yeah, without internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's absolutely essential, and it's going to be essential as we move to a multi-planetary species. You know, as we colonize Mars, proof of work, proof of stake are not going to be useful. Just plain and simply stated. Um, if you divide the economies of humanity into Mars and Earth, and then you put a 3 minute buffer between them, and only Earth has voting power over the Bitcoin network, then Mars is left as a second class citizen, and sooner or later that leads to war,
Yeah.
historically speaking. So that's not a economic model that works in an interplanetary society.
Hmm. Everyone's talking about Antarctica in the chat. I got someone who's like, you don't even read the live chat. And I'm like, you guys are having this whole rabbit hole discussion about Antarctica in here. Um, what are your thoughts on what are your thoughts on Antarctica?
I'm in uniform. I can't talk about Antarctica.
Oh, really?
Most of it's classified.
Okay. That's interesting. um, okay, what else do we got? Yeah, X Pop. Yeah, I thought that was a super good development, and I thought that people get it twisted saying that Ripple is only a banker's coin, but yet they're developing something like that that really is an advantage for people in third world countries that aren't tapped into internet yet, you know? So for me, that is just a ridiculous narrative that XRP is just this banker's coin, right?
It's a ridiculous narrative. It's just as ridiculous as people hating whales and trying to stop whales from playing part. And people that don't understand the concept of capitalism are the people that call it a banker's coin, or try to prevent large players from having an influence. The reality is, if Ripple is a banker's coin, then that's a good thing. Or excuse me, XRP is a banker's coin. It's a good thing because it's bringing digital currency to the banks, and you want that. It, there's too many people wrapped up around the axles about things that actually help them.
Okay, here's a good question from the audience, guys. Please continue to drop your questions here. We're running out of time here with Patrick. Why do you think that Jed McCaleb was not included in the lawsuit with Ripple?
He had already received a payout in a settlement with Ripple, and I think that if I were sitting on the SEC side of the table, I would want to hold Jed McCaleb in my back pocket as somebody to potentially testify against Garlinghouse.
Wow.
As
Yeah.
that would be my play if I were Gary Gensler.
I
Just
never
saying.
thought of that. I always figured that Jed seems like he has some pretty high up connections and is tapped in. And just his ability to move from these different projects, he was running Mt. Gox and then left. They had the biggest hack ever. Then he went and joins Ripple, starts up this, which is going to be one of the largest cryptocurrency companies in the world. And then he dips, and then they get sued by the SEC, and he's not involved. But that would make sense that, I mean, I've always kind of thought that he's just kind of in bed with them, and that, yeah, that makes sense. What are your thoughts on XLM?
XLM is largely a Microsoft IBM run project, and I think it's a good project as far as the concept. I think it still doesn't really know where it's going, if that makes sense. If you've ever seen a corporation do some multi-billion-dollar project and still stumble all over itself, uh, you you'll see that in XLM.
So you're saying that they're heavily tied in with Microsoft and IBM?
Yes.
I didn't realize they had the Microsoft connection too. I knew about IBM.
Well, Microsoft owned IBM for a number of years, and even when companies are sold out from under the umbrella, they still retain a identity or a DNA of.
Do you think that these central bank digital currencies are going to be built on cryptos platforms like XLM or XRP?
Yeah, definitely. They already are. I know that XRP sidechains are already being used to develop CBDCs.
Okay, another theory that's throwing around right now is that they're testing or running XRP at a much higher price in the private layer for central banks. What do you think about that?
Yeah, why wouldn't they? Makes perfect sense.
Okay, so going down that rabbit hole, would that basically could there be a scenario where they run XRP at a much higher price on that private layer and then the price of XRP out here on the public layer remains low?
Uh, so the only thing is that private layer and that public layer are going to have to remain separate, right? So it's a private ledger of the XRP blockchain, but if you could cross those, then anybody inside that private ledger could just buy off the market and put it into the private ledger and completely skew against whoever they're trading with. So just because it's the government trading with the government doesn't mean they want it to be unfair or biased within their own government.
So essentially, if they had an agreement, XRP on the private ledger is running at 10,000, you're not going to be able to go back to the public market and buy XRP at 50 cents and take it back to that private ledger.
Right, because that would completely destroy that private ledger.
Would that take away from the use or the utility of XRP, or would that only increase it?
It doesn't really do either. It's more like a whole nother cryptocurrency that's just operating in private.
But would they be using part of the circulating supply that exists now?
Probably not.
So if they ran a private, or if they were running the private layer at a much higher price, it's going to have no benefit really to XRP out on the public ledger.
That would be my guess, yes.
Wow. Could they do an agreement where basically all at once they're moving 10 billion XRP to the private layer, and that's going to be a designated, the XRP private layer coin, but they're taking 10 billion out of circulation to do that? Or are they just going to basically create a whole nother coin?
They'd create a whole nother coin. There's really no reason to buy off the market if they have the ability to print for it at a private ledger.
Wow. So basically, the private layer is not going to benefit us regular XRP holders at all.
No.
Wow. Okay.
If anything, it's a test bed.
Wow. So going along that lines, there is a scenario where they could be using XRP, basically their own version of XRP.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I can create a cryptocurrency, they can create a cryptocurrency. There's no reason to suspect that they're not doing that already.
Okay, you're scaring me, Patrick.
Just keeping it real.
This is what we have to run through. We have to run through these real scenarios. Yeah. Because there would be a lot of benefits for them to do something like that, right? I mean,
so the main difference is that by creating their own cryptocurrency and trading it amongst each other, they can establish a set value, right? And they can do that, but then they can't interact with the public. XRP in a buyback scenario could interact with banks and private governments while still having the blessing of the public as having a value because it's been held by the public. So that don't undersell the value of XRP being a public blockchain.
right. Right. Yeah, because so they would miss out on the advantages of being tapped into the public layer.
Exactly, and that's where all the money really is, right?
Because would the coin itself would have more potential if they were using the same public layer coin as well.
Exactly.
Because it could exponentially grow past whatever value they're using. They would just basically be creating a stable coin for their private layer versus tapping into the public layer. And for say if they were eating up XRP, that was going to exponentially grow past whatever their stable coin value is on the private layer, that would actually have more. They would have the benefits of the public layer, and XRP's value potential would be much more too.
Exactly. So if they have a private layer that they're trading a certain amount, how do they get the GDP of their nation or whatever it is and wrap that gross domestic product, the production of workers out in the economy? How do they take that value and translate it into the private ledger after they're already trading on a private ledger? And the reality is, if they keep those separate, they can't do that. So the public aspect of XRP is a value in itself.
Right. So would a more likely scenario be like JP Morgan launches their coin, JPM coin, and JPM coin is tapped into that private layer, but that private layer is also tapped into the public layer too, like something like that kind of scenario?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think they have to have their tendrils in both. I'll be blunt with the JP Morgan coin. I expect that regardless of how much they're spending, it's gonna crash and burn and be worthless. But that's because I think they have the wrong team to run that. Jamie Dimon has no business running a cryptocurrency company.
Yeah, and so basically all of these, the same problem occurs when all of these companies launch their own stablecoin or their own token, you have to trust JP Morgan. When Chase Bank launches their coin, you're going to have to trust Chase. And so to get that trust between them, you would use a neutral bridge currency like XRP. And if they had the ability to make moves on that private layer that were out of the view, to me, that's the whole value of the private layer, is to do their transactions on that private layer where it's not visible to the public, but then still have the ability to tap into the public layer when they need to.
Exactly.
Right.
And yeah, trust is the root of all value, right? So in currency. So without trust, it's worthless. And I think JP Morgan is probably at the bottom of the list of who cryptocurrency users would actually trust to create a currency.
Okay. I wanted to ask about, people ask me all the time about VET. You're familiar with VET, I'm sure.
No, I'm not. Which one's bet?
So they're supposed to be for like logistics and tracking technology. That's what their blockchain use case is for.
Yep.
But they were created out of China, I believe. And people ask me about it, and I say, well, that's a solid utility. There's going to be a lot of tracking logistics ran on blockchain technology. But specifically with VET, I've never been bullish on it because I just feel like Amazon is going to create their own token or build on top of another blockchain that doesn't come from China. What do you think about that use case? Maybe not speaking so much on VET, but on that use case utility of logistics tracking and a company like Amazon,
I
what would
would say that's one of the same problems that a large majority of tokens out there that call themselves utility tokens are facing, as they want to create something for tracking. For example, we have Cali token in the XRP ledger that wants to track food to watch for expiration dates and put the right amount in the right place for the right number of people and that sort of thing. And that's great. It's definitely a use case for blockchain, but where's the value proposition to buy, sell, and trade that token? Uh, and by putting something like that on the blockchain and adding a value to it, all you've really done is make that system more expensive. So if you're tracking inventory, supply chain management through a blockchain, why do you need a value instead of just a hash algorithm of what you're scanning and where it goes? And UPS already does that. You have package tracking, and that's very similar in a sense to a blockchain. So all you need is the code, and you're sending it. But is there any reason to give your UPS tracking number a valuation of $100? No, that would be ridiculous.
And the same thing for data. People are these data coins that are coming out, like VXV, Vector Space AI, and all these different ones. I've always thought the same thing in regards to that use case as well. Is why would the blockchain need to have a coin that has a value, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't. And that's where a lot of people get confused, is they think, oh yeah, we can put that on the blockchain. That doesn't mean it needs to be a separate cryptocurrency. It doesn't mean it needs to be a cryptocurrency with value or a currency of any kind. It can still just be a blockchain.
So just backing up general thoughts, are you more like bullish on cryptocurrencies versus utility tokens?
No. So I'm bullish on real world application, physical effects. Um, so with my own token with Reaper, I'm able to go out and affect the price of other tokens every time we do a reaping. And then with our DeFi, we'll be able to effectively replace money market and other type of investment accounts. And that gives people the ability to change their lives based on holding Reaper token. Uh, these other tokens out there, there's some that will change your life, and there's some that no matter what it does, the only way it can change your life is the dollar value assigned to it. And if the only thing it has is the dollar value assigned to it, it's pretty much worthless as the dollar.
What are your thoughts on crypto.com as an exchange and as a company, what they're doing?
So I definitely like their move with picking up the stadium naming rights. When they did that, I bought some crypto.com, their token, because I'll respect a big play like that. I think that they have a good layout. I do use their app once in a while. Um, as far as the hacking and the 30 million stolen, obviously it's a bad look, and I think the way they move forward from here will tell us a lot about whether or not they're going to be competitive in the market in another 5 to 10 years.
Someone asked, will banks survive the onset of DeFi?
Uh, Banks will survive at least another 20 or 30 years on account of just that's the way it's always been done. And people will still go to a bank for an auto loan, and they'll go to a bank to figure out some other things, try to put in savings, even though it's not a savings. um, Within 30 years, I would expect there won't be any hard standing banks left in at least in any of the first world countries.
Yeah. Any thoughts on hash graph technology?
Not really.
Not really. Have you looked at HBAR at all?
I see it as another blockchain that's late to market and slow moving, and they'll struggle with adoption. It's a good technology, but they're gonna have to get adoption, and I'm not seeing their inroads at this point.
Yeah. And what about like DEG? What do they call it? Is it direct acrylic graph? That basically the same thing as hash graph?
I'm not familiar with DAG.
Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of these they are touting this hash graph technology and how great it is, and with HBAR they tout 10,000 transactions per second, but for their smart contracts, they're actually running more at like 13 transactions per second. So when it's actually like in
Yeah,
use. Um, so yeah, I've had
and yeah, it's another classic crypto thing is to overpromise and underdeliver, and even the $1 billion market cap coins are not they're not free of that. They tend to overpromise and underdeliver.
mhm. Yeah, did you see the news about HBAR getting their patent back?
I did not.
Okay. Yeah, it was kind of a good news for the HBAR holders, or at least they were touting it as being good because, and I don't see how it couldn't be. I mean, they didn't have the patent to that technology. It was owned by someone else, but uh, not the community, but the council that runs HBAR basically acquired that patent back, and they're open sourcing the technology. But I've had my same reservations because I see the technology, that's great, but it's not all about the technology. I feel like the partnerships are what matter in this space a lot too. And a lot of companies are claiming fake partnerships.
Yeah, definitely.
Like basically, uh, everyone talks about they're partnered up with Chainlink, which to me doesn't mean anything because everyone's,
Chainlink's whole purpose is to partner.
yeah, exactly. I'm like,
Yeah.
that doesn't really like mean much. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on Chainlinks and Oracle blockchains?
Uh, so I definitely think Chainlink has a use case. I like Chainlink. I see a future use case for Reaper token with Chainlink um, that we are planning. That's going to be about 2 to 3 years out. Um, Oracle, I'm not that familiar with.
So you're looking at maybe working with Chainlink in the next couple years.
Working with their products,
Okay.
whether or not the team's on board is neither here nor there. But using a similar setup to what they have, if that is easier to do using something they've developed or interlinking with Chainlink, then so be it. If it's easier for us to design something similar and use it ourselves, then that's what we'll do.
Mm. So have you heard of API 3?
Nope.
Okay. Supposed to be a competitor to Chainlink, kind of similar use case. But yeah, and I forgot, what was that coin that you mentioned to me last time? I never did actually follow up and actually research that. It was Banca.
Banco, yep.
Banca AI. What's the utility there that they're doing? Or
So essentially, they're smart contracts that can think and route to their destination.
okay. Yeah. I'll have to check that out more. I like your thoughts though, Patrick, in regards to the logistics use case as far as data. I think that a lot of people are just thinking that if a crypto has AI in the name or says they're going for AI technology, it's one of those things. Or we're seeing it with the metaverse where anything meta is running up too. And this is just like a common problem in this space, is that people are riding hype instead of real partnerships, real adoption, and real technology that needs to be on a blockchain, because a lot of things don't need to necessarily be on a blockchain.
Exactly, and it's the same thing we saw with .com.
Right.
There was businesses actually putting .com on their sign back in the 90s, and it was extremely lame now looking back, but then it was the thing to do. They added .com.
Do you have any thoughts on XDC?
Not really. I see the community talking about it a lot. I haven't honestly taken the time to research it because the community talks about it being the partner to XRP, and they talk about it being the mini XRP or whatever it is, and none of that impresses me because I never see anyone talking about what it's actually for.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to get into that here. I was just thought, but what about R3 Corda? Any thoughts on them?
I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay, all right. Well, Patrick, we've been on for a while, and I really appreciate all your time. I know you're a busy man these days, so we're definitely going to be watching the developments there over at Reaper. Is there any final words that you want to say to the audience?
Just check out the Reaper.io if you want to see what we're about. We got a lot coming, a lot of development. I know there's hopium all over this market, as well as a whole lot of fear and doubt. And that's not what we're about. We have a plan, we have a model, and we have designed something that will actually cause our price to rise. We have a mechanism, and we're not about speculation. We aren't asking you to speculate, we're asking you to use. So if that's something that interests you, come and join the Reaper team, and we're happy to have you.
Yeah, I love what you guys are doing there. One last question I was trying to clarify is, every vote that you make with the Reaper, like I was looking to make a vote on the Zoom wallet or the Zum wallet, but every vote that you're making is going to burn a little bit of XRP, isn't it?
The 0.000012 transaction fee that you are spending to basically send your transaction to the blockchain, and that is your vote, is being logged onto the ledger.
Right. So it's just that regular XRP transaction fee, that minimum, which is like 12 drops or whatever it is, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Which I was like, that's bullish, because that's every vote that you guys are doing is going to be burning part of the XRP circulating supply, which is a good thing.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Patrick. I really appreciate you coming on and giving us the time. We're going to watch this one closely. Super excited to see who ends up getting reaped this next month. Super excited for the NFTs. A lot of good things that I'm hearing from you and your company. So keep up the great work.
All right. Thank you very much, Zach.
All right. Thank you. YouTube, thank you for coming in. If you could hit the thumbs up, make sure you guys share this stream. Let everyone know that